First off, for all of you, that video is confirmation that the drums are actually the devil's instrument. Right? This is odd. I think that was Vicky who said, no, they're not. That's not who I was expecting. Oh, no, it was Dustin, sorry. I don't know why Vicky and Dustin's voice sounded alike to me. Whatever. Second off, the video that you saw of Kevin Sanders and Paul racing, that is the highlight of 2014 for me. And I had a kid this year. So today we're wrapping up this series, Jack in the Box, that we've looked at as to what are the temptations that we face, what do they look like, how can we be prepared for them. And we use this metaphor of the Jack in the Box because we said normally when we're tempted we think it's like this weird set of circumstances, all of a sudden we couldn't prepare for it, we didn't know what happened, and we just want you to know one thing, that it's predictable. It's common. And so we've just tried to take you through what are these common things that are so predictable so we know how we're actually tempted. So I'm going to take you back through the first 2 weeks real quickly to set you up in the story. The passage that we're looking at is Matthew chapter 4, and they are bringing the lights up slowly if you have your Bible with you so that you can read along. And this is what it says, starting in verse 1. It says, "Then Jesus was led by the Spirit into the wilderness to be tempted by the devil. After fasting 40 days and 40 nights, he was hungry. And the tempter came to him and said, 'If you are the Son of God, tell these stones to become bread.' And Jesus answered, 'It is written, man shall not live on bread alone, but on every word that comes from the mouth of God.'" And we said the first temptation is this, to meet a need that is right at a time that is wrong. It's very simple. Jesus was not in the desert to eat. He was there to fast and focus on God. And that for each one of us, there will be different seasons of our lives that we'll go through that, there may be things that, there's no law against, there's no moral command against, but we just know they're wrong. It's not right for us at this point in time. And that to fall into that temptation is to lead yourself down a path that you don't want to go. So that was the first one. And then it continues on in verse 5. It says, "Then the devil took him to the holy city and had him stand on the highest point of the temple. 'If you are the Son of God,' he said, 'throw yourself down. For it is written, he will command his angels concerning you, and they will lift you up in their hands, so that you will not strike your foot against a stone.' And Jesus answered him, 'It is also written, do not put the Lord your God to the test.'" And so we said the second temptation was this, to abdicate my responsibility in the name of faith. I kind of refer to it like this. You play the God card. I don't need to do this, even though I'm capable, even though it's possible, even though it's well within my domain to do this, to help someone, to take responsibility here. I don't need to do this because God will take care of it. And if there's one that of these three temptations that we're looking at that makes me the most angry, it's that one, because I've seen it happen a whole lot. It's a sense of, I understand that person has a need or has a struggle, and I could help, but you know what, I'll pray for them instead. And that's never how God wanted us to be. And so today we're going to continue with verse 8. And the temptation that we're going to look at today is, it's really interesting to me. We're going to talk about this idea of shortcuts and what it looks like to take shortcuts in our lives. And this is very different because, first off, this is a different category because I think normally when we talk about shortcuts, we just talk about driving. And driving shortcuts are great. I am all for driving shortcut. In fact, I will gladly take, I don't know how many of us are in this boat, just because when I feel like I've taken a shortcut driving, I feel like somehow I'm ahead of the world. And I know I'm not in a race, I know no one's with me, but I would more than happy get lost trying to find a shortcut and lose hours of my life than to not attempt at all. There's a shortcut, oh yeah. And then you get there 2 minutes early, and then you just feel what am I going to do with all this time? It's so early. And I just usually sit down and play on my phone. It's oh yeah, that was a massive advantage. But what we're going to talk about today in terms of the shortcuts we take in our lives. And this is what I was going to do at the start. I was going to go through all the possible shortcuts that I see people take. But I'm not going to do that now because I don't want to give you tunnel vision on what the shortcuts that we could possibly take are. But this is what I want to show you as we dive into this passage, and this will make more sense as we go. That a lot of the shortcuts that we take morally, ethically, with our path, a lot of the things that we try to do along the way that we go, hey, I want to reach here, but I don't want to go the path set out. I want to somehow get there a different way. That a lot of those shortcuts, how destructive they can be, and what's really at stake. And that to me is the biggest thing, is that when we take those shortcuts in our lives, morally, ethically, or somewhere along that line, we just go, yeah, well, I have to compromise this to get there a little faster. I have to compromise this right here, or take this different route, or maybe step outside the bounds legally, or step outside the bounds morally in order to get there. But that's it. It's just one thing. It's one lie. It's one cheating. I mean, it's just one thing. But I want to show you the bigger picture of what's at stake and why it's so important for you that you don't do that. And let me say this also before we get into this. If at any time today it feels like I'm coming across as a parent, I apologize in advance. And that's just miscommunication on my part, because that is the one thing that I don't want you to feel. I don't want you to ever feel like, especially as we're going through this today, that I'm like wagging my finger at you. Now, it's going to be possible that I might wag my finger because I use lots of hand gestures, but you understand the difference there? Because I want you to understand, this is so important, I want you to understand that what is at stake for you personally is so huge here. And I don't think we often put this in context of what's happening. So with that said, let's go ahead and look at this third temptation. So this is Matthew chapter 4, and starting in verse 8. And it says, "Again, the devil took him to a very high mountain and showed him all the kingdoms of the world and their splendor." So they've gone a couple different places. They're in the desert. Then he takes him to the temple. And now he takes him up to a very high mountain. And he shows him like everything that's going on. All the kingdoms, all the cities. I don't know how that's possible, but it's possible. And so Jesus just like seeing the entire world stretched out before him. Now, if that was me there, I'd be like, whoa, this is cool. That's pretty. That's big. I hope I don't fall. Like, that's what I would do. But we notice something from Jesus' response later on, and I'll just give you the clue now, that Jesus sees it very differently. When Jesus sees all the kingdoms and everything stretched out before him, he sees people. And that's a very important difference. When I'm in a crowd, I see a crowd. When Jesus is in a crowd, he sees all the individual people in there. And we see countless stories throughout his life where he's with a crowd of people, and he'll like pick out one person. And like we see him, like he's walking along the road. One of the more famous Bible stories that we teach to kids is he's walking along the road one day, and it said there's all these people. It's almost like a parade. There's all these people huddled around. And this guy who was really short by the name of Zacchaeus climbs up in a tree. It's like, if that's me walking through, I just see a mass of faces. But Jesus sees like individual people. He sees problems. He sees struggles. And in that case, he says, Zacchaeus, you come down. I'm going to your house. And he does this over and over again. And this is very important to note, that when Jesus is here and the temptation that he's about to face, he's not just seeing the whole big world stretched out before him. He sees how this is going to affect each individual person. And this is what he's tempted with. It says this, verse 9. "All this I will give you," he said, "if you will bow down and worship me." All this. So he sees everything, all the kingdoms, all the cities of the entire earth, all the people stretched out before him. He says, I will give you all this if you will bow down and worship me. And it brings up this question that I've heard many people talk about in messages and things like that, where the question is, can he offer that? Like, can he actually do that? And just to correct this, if you've heard this before, I've heard this taught wrong many times. Like, the devil offers something that isn't his to give. And technically, the world wasn't his, okay? The world wasn't his. But what he is giving, I could explain this. It would take me like 20 minutes because I'm not that smart to explain it fully, like theologically. And so I'll give you the shortened version right here. What he's basically offering him is to bypass the cross. You see, when sin entered the world, there was a payment that had to be made. We understand this, okay? When someone wrongs you, someone always has to pay. In the metaphor that I've used before, it's like if someone hits your car, you got a couple options. They pay, you pay to fix it, or you just cancel the debt and you say nothing's going to happen. And it was the same way when sin entered the world. When sin entered the world, someone had to pay. God's perfect. God is holy. And so as soon as something that he had created had been fractured, had been broken, something had to be done to set it right. And that's why Jesus came, to set things right. And so what Satan is basically saying right here is he's saying, I understand there's a curse. I understand there's something that has gone wrong. And he's saying, I will give it all to you if you'll just bow down and worship me. And as we've talked throughout this series, the importance of the internal dialogue and knowing what's happening here. And if you're Jesus, if it was me, this is what I'd be going, you know what? I'm like, I don't want to die. I don't want to die on the cross. That sounds painful. And then you start getting to this. Okay, so why am I here? I'm here to save people. And so if I just bow down just this once, I guess if I just bent my knee and lowered my head a little, it could look like I'm just tying my sandals. Like, that's what I could tell people later on. Jesus, what are you doing? Oh, I was just tying my sandals. I didn't know what was happening. You just go along those lines. Like, it's not that big of a deal. And if I did that, everyone gets saved, and I don't have to die. Like, how great does that sound? Everyone is saved, and I don't have to die. And so what the devil is saying right here is he's stretched out, and he sees everyone. He sees everyone. As he goes, hey, if you just bend your knee and worship me, you don't have to die, and you get what you came for. Now, you've got to worship what's wrong along the way, but that's what's at stake. And it'd be really easy in that moment to think, you know what? I accomplished what I'd meant to. Not maybe the way that I was meant to, but I accomplished what I was supposed to. It's not that big of a deal. But Jesus shows us there's more at stake. This is what he says. Verse 10. Away from me, Satan, for it is written, worship the Lord your God and serve him only. Now this is very important. I want to emphasize these two words. He says worship the Lord your God, and then he emphasizes the next with, and serve him only. Now here's the idea, and this is what's very important. Worship is the goal that we're pursuing. Like, in every single one of our lives, we have something that we worship. For lots of us, it's not God. For lots of us, it's maybe a standard of achievement. Maybe it's the respect of our peers and those around us. Maybe it's a certain amount of financial gain, certain amount of career success along the way. For every single one of us, we have something that we worship. And that is, for us, the goal that we're pursuing. If you claim to be a follower of Christ, your goal should be or will be God. That it's pursuing God, figuring out who he is, and becoming more and more like him every day. But he's saying right here, in what he does in terms of understanding how we live is so important, is he's putting together these two ideas of what it is we're pursuing, and then when he gets to serving, that is how we do it. And so if your God, if what you're worshiping, let's say, is a certain amount of career success, then serving then is the how we're doing it. So let me go ahead and show you these two ideas. So we've got worship is the what, and serving is the how. So worship is the what, and serving is the how. Now this is important, and I'll break this down in just a second. Is that tying these two ideas together is so significant. Because I believe everyone deep down thinks that they are the good guy. Like, that's my favorite thing to do when we play pickup basketball games, is some people will like, what's the score? And I will always refer to the other team as Russia, because I think that's hilarious. Like, we're not Russia. Okay, you're China. Take that. Sorry, I shouldn't make those jokes. But we always think, like, no matter who we are, no matter what we're going through, that we're the good guy. Right? No matter what it is we're doing, we always have that assumption that we're the good guy in the scenario. Let me give you a really easy example for today. If you follow the news much at all, you have heard this group, ISIS, mentioned over and over again. This is a group that, like, right now, okay, I want to emphasize that, this is not mythical fantasy world, this is not thousands of years ago, right now is murdering people, killing innocent people, beheading babies, and destroying people's lives. And so we look at that and we go, they're the bad guys, right? Like that seems pretty clear cut and simple. they're the bad guys. But they don't think they are. You talk to them, they go, are you the bad? No, we're the good guys. Because here's their belief system, is that basically in their structure that there's going to be a second coming. They believe kind of in a second coming, but it's more in the sense of a government and a system and how the land's coming, and there's going to be a significant person who rises up. But they basically believe that there needs to be a second coming along that way. And in order for that to happen, the conditions have to be right in terms of their religion and their purity in order for that to take place. So what they believe they are doing is they are paving the way for the second coming. And the way that they're doing that is by killing and destroying anyone who doesn't agree with their beliefs. And so if you were to talk to them, you're like, hey, who's the bad guy? And they're like, they're the bad guys. We're the good guys. We're the people who are willing to make the cuts and do the things necessary in order to accomplish what we need to accomplish. But then they're doing that by killing children, beheading Christians, and basically just destroying anyone who doesn't agree with them. You see, we get into this really murky waters in terms of who's the good guy and who's the bad guy, because we all deep down at our core believe the things that we are pursuing are correct. We believe the what we're worshiping, whatever that what is, the purpose, the goal, we believe that that is right, and that's how it should be. But then when you get to tying this idea of the how together, that's where it gets important. So these are some things we'd agree with. The first one is this. We would agree if you're pursuing the right what with the right how, that's correct. Right? We would all agree with that. If you're pursuing the right goal through the right methods, then you are good. We would also agree with this if you're pursuing the wrong goal through the wrong methods, that would be bad. This is pretty easy morality. 5-year-olds understand this. We get this all along the way. If you're pursuing the right goal through the right methods, you're a good guy. If you're pursuing the wrong goal, even though we all think we're right, but if you would say, I'm pursuing the wrong goal through the wrong methods, then you're bad. But this is where it gets tricky. How about when you're pursuing the right what, but you have the wrong how? What happens then? Who are you? Which side are you on? When you're pursuing the right goal through the wrong methods, where do you fall? You see, there's a statement that's become very common in our society today, and politicians use it all the time, and they'll say, the ends justify the means. The thing that we are accomplishing is a great excuse for pursuing it in a dishonorable way along the way. And I think it's made it so deep down into who we are that we really believe it. That, you know what? It's as long as I've got the right goal, it doesn't matter what I do along the way. I've heard it said like this, and this is most commonly said about students and younger kids, that I'll see people and they'll just start making a mess of their lives, and they just do dumb stuff. Not picking on them. We all do dumb stuff. But I'll see people, they'll just start making a mess of their lives. And some really well-meaning adult will come in and yeah, but they have a good heart. Yeah, but they're a bad person. Their heart may be fine, but as long as they keep doing this stuff, that is not okay. And we use that as an excuse, yeah, but their heart's in the right place. It's if you accidentally, if you're cooking dinner, I don't know how this would happen. I should have thought of this scenario before. Bear with me, okay? This is going to be a little bit of a stretch. Let's say we're cooking dinner, and you accidentally stab me in the arm. Now, how you stab me in the arm has not exactly been thought out, because I did not think of this ahead of time. But let's say you stab me in the arm. Am I in that moment going to look at you well, at least you were trying to cook dinner? That's not going to happen. It'd be duh! And then I'd probably pass out because I'd be so freaked out. But I would have that first moment of, duh! And then we'd move on. But we don't get that. But we think that over and over again throughout our lives, that if I'm pursuing the right goal, even if I use the wrong methods, then I'm okay. And what's at stake here is an issue of our integrity. And I'll explain this deeper in just a second. But integrity, at the core, it means to be whole. To be whole. And so this is the third temptation that Jesus faced. To sacrifice his integrity, for you it's my integrity, for the sake of a shortcut. To sacrifice what it is that makes me whole in order to get to the destination faster, in order to get to the goal quicker, in order to get to the goal easier. To sacrifice my integrity for the sake of a shortcut. Now let's talk about this idea of integrity, and let's pull it apart for a little bit. We don't talk about it as much today, but integrity is a common word when we talk about life development, character, focus, the core qualities of who we are as a person. The word integrity often comes up, and we get that. That integrity means to be whole. We understand people who have integrity in their lives. Basically, we say, these people are trustworthy. I can trust them because they have integrity. We understand people who don't, and we will say, hey, they're selfish. They're pursuing their own gains. They may have good goals. They may believe at the core and be pursuing the same things that I'm pursuing, but I don't agree with them on how they're doing it. I can't trust them. They don't have integrity. And normally when we talk about this idea of integrity, we talk about it in the sense of, when I've heard it taught to others, it's kind of like this. We'll bring up like an issue of lying. And like, isn't it the worst when you have to try to remember your lies and cover it up? You're like, yeah. Wouldn't it be so much easier if you could just be truthful? Yeah, you need to have integrity. And like we all agree with that. And I've heard that taught from a stage countless times. Like, you shouldn't lie because that way you don't have to try to remember what your lies are. But when we actually get to that moment and we see the consequences that we would have to face if we're truthful, we go, you know what, I can try to remember the lies. I'm willing to take that risk. Right? That's what we do. And so we talk about this idea of integrity, or we'll talk about it from this sense, like, don't you want people to be able to trust you? Yeah. Yeah, you need to have integrity so people will be able to trust you. And then you get in the moment and it's like, you know what? I don't care that much about people not trusting me. I want more money. Or I want this. And so we actually get there in that moment. Integrity becomes not a big deal. So I want to teach it a little bit differently so you can actually understand what's really at stake. I believe one of the worst sins that you can commit is to lie. And I don't believe that God grades them on a scale. I don't believe God's up to ooh, lying, bad. Murder, a little worse. Stealing, yeah. I don't believe that's how it goes. I believe God sees all of our sins equal. But I believe in terms of damage to our soul, one of the worst sins that you can commit is to lie. And this is why. Because when we begin to lie to others, one of the quick things that begins to happen is as soon as that becomes common, as soon as that becomes maybe an option, it is okay for me to lie. If I'm in a pinch, now overall I don't agree with it, but if I'm in a pinch, or I need to do something, or I need to say something so that this other person can benefit, then I'll lie. As soon as that becomes a viable option for us in our lives, one of the quick things that begins to happen is we begin to lie to ourselves about who we are, about how we're doing, about the things that we're going through. One of the most common phrases in kind of the new movements of, they don't refer to it as religion because that's what their parents did. They don't refer to it as faith. They usually refer to it as spirituality. Like, I just need to be spiritual. I don't know what that means, but I just need to be spiritual. One of the most common phrases that comes out of that movement and group is you need to be true to yourself. You need to be true to yourself. And what they usually mean in those moments is you need to do what makes you happy. You need to do whatever it is that you think you should pursue. That's what your life should be about. Whatever it is that's going to make you happy. And that's not what that statement should mean. First off, because honestly, the things that make me happy in that moment are not usually the things that are best for me. Last night we were driving back from the softball tournament. It was 11 o'clock, and I bought a large chocolate milkshake. Bad decision. 2 o'clock told me. Bad decision. But like we get that, like, oh, I need to be true to myself. I just need to do the things that make me happy. I believe we should take that statement literally. You need to be true to yourself. You need to be honest with yourself about who you are and what's happening. Because this is what happens. As soon as you begin lying to yourself, you lose your bearings on the world. You begin to live in basically what's like a fantasy land. And you don't know what's right, you don't know what's wrong. And at the worst, this is the worst. And I don't know, I want to say I don't know how people do this, but honestly, I've been there. And so I do a little bit. But I can't imagine continually what it's like to look at yourself in the mirror and not know who you are. And to over and over again look at that and be like, I don't know if I should be this person today, or this person today, or this person today. I don't know how that should function. And I think the important thing is this, is that as long as you pretend to be a different person, as long as you pretend to be someone that you're not, there is no room in your life for God to bless you. Let me say it like this. God cannot bless who you pretend to be. And I just simply say that as He's not able to. I don't even mean like He doesn't want to. It is not possible for Him to bless who you pretend to be. And so what we do along the way, and it's so maddening to me, is we see the goals that we want in life, but we always want to take a shortcut. We always want to figure out an easier, quicker way to get there. And if it makes us lean to the side and do some things that are wrong, that we know are incorrect, we go, yeah, but I'll get there faster and it's good. And when we actually arrive, we become someone who we were never meant to be. And it's a tragedy. In the early church, one of the most common practices that they had that really was at the center of their community was confession. And I don't mean it in the sense of like Catholic church confession where you like go in the booth and do the thing. I've never been there. I am only saying what I know from movies that usually involve the mafia. So I don't know how accurate my information is, but I'm going to assume it's accurate. Everything that happens in movies is right. But it's not that kind of thing. Like, basically what it was is a group of people would gather around, and it wasn't, hey, tell me your sins. I think this is how it functioned. It was, hey, how are you doing? What's going on? And then they did this incredibly supernatural thing that shocks us all. They asked someone how they were doing, and then they stuck around long enough to actually hear the answer. One of the things that makes me crazy, and I do this often because I'm very scattered and I've got lots to do and I've got my list and I've got to check it off, is I'll ask someone how they're doing and then I'll jump to the next thing. Like and I've just kind of realized this for myself, if all I want to say is hi, I need to just say hi. But if I'm saying how are you doing, I can't say how are you doing and keep walking. I need to actually sit and want an answer. This is why for us as a church, groups are so central to what we do. Because basically what a group is a group of friends, a community of people. Some people will be like you, some people won't be like you. But you can sit around and we ask, hey, what's going on? How you doing? And I don't mean like we have that as a set thing every week that we're going to go around and say, and how are you doing? And how are you doing? No, but it's a group of people who are going to come together who will know how you're doing because they will be able to sense it a little bit. And they'll ask those questions, and they're actually going to listen. They're actually going to listen and see what you say. And there's something about this that absolutely just purifies your soul. It just changes it. And you can remember back to this, like when you were a kid, and you had maybe hid something from your parents or your friends, and the lies just started building up. I had this thing, I can't remember if I've told this story before. When I was in third grade and I was playing on a basketball team, we had these late practices, and then my dad would always stay after and talk to all the coaches. And so I just sit there for like half an hour, and I had nothing to do. And so there was a payphone. Do we remember payphones? Okay, for those of you young people, these are phones that were attached to the wall. And you put money in, and you talk to people. Now, there were no games. There was no internet. It was just a phone. And so I'd sit there, and I had no money, and I would just take the phone, and I'd just press the buttons over and over again. And I remember going through, and I was like trying to press things, and like, no, that doesn't work, because I didn't have any money. Press operator, that didn't work. I was like, hey, maybe I'll call 911. I don't have any money. 911. Hello, 911. Whoop. And then word got out after that. Someone had called 911 because we left before the cops came. And my dad's like, hey, did you do that? Mm-mm. And like I lied and I lied and I lied and I lied for months about that until like finally like word got back. Like we had eyewitness accounts of me on the phone and like, did you do this? Mm-mm. And then I remember in the moment that I finally confessed, it was like just this huge weight had been lifted off of me because I was like, oh man, I don't have to carry that anymore. I don't have to pretend to be this. I can actually be myself. And I think a lot of us quit doing that when we were 10. And we've been trying to keep up with the persona of who we've pretended to be ever since then. And it's exhausting, isn't it? Like it is just downright exhausting to do that. And we think that the issue with integrity is simply that you'll do, like you need to have integrity, otherwise it's wrong. You need to have integrity, otherwise you'll have to try to remember your lies. And I want to show you there's more at stake. This is how the passage ends. So he says to Satan, he says, worship the Lord your God and serve him only. He says, the right thing to do is the right what with the right how. The right what with the wrong how is wrong. He says, the ends don't justify the means. If I could say it like this, the means are what separate good from bad. If we're pursuing the right goals through the wrong methods, we become the bad guys. That's what that is. And so he resists that and he says, no, I'm going to have integrity. I'm going to be true to myself. And I don't mean it in the sense of do whatever I'm going to do. And then this happens. It says, then the devil left him, and angels came and attended him. Now, to be clear, I have never had angels come and attend me. But this is what I have happened, is I have had periods in my life, and I'm not going to go into the examples, honestly, because they're a lot weird. I've had times in my life where I've resisted, where I've pushed off, and then God came through in a way that I couldn't possibly explain. And this is what I believe. I believe for some of us, we've never seen God come through in our lives because we've never resisted. Like, I've never had the voice. I've never had the sign in the sky. But I have had repeatedly where I go, I have no other way to explain what happened other than God did something. But that only ever happened after. And that's important. It only ever happened after I chose to do what was hard and what was difficult and what was painful in order to stay on the path that God called me to. And I think we often get to these spots in our lives where we're going, God just isn't real to me. He's just not there. And yeah, there's dry seasons, absolutely. But I want to ask on the other end, did you ever put up a fight to follow him? Like, or did you just give in over and over and over again, and they end up in the spot and you go, God isn't real? Of course to you, God isn't real. I mean, of course you can't feel his presence. Of course he's not there. But when Jesus resists, when Jesus says, I'm going to maintain my integrity, I'm not going to sacrifice it because it's a little bit easier or to avoid the cross. It says God comes to him and meets him at his point of need. And that's what I want for you. The way of not following Jesus will always be easier. The way of not following Christ will always, always be easier. But I promise you that it is worth it. As someone who at times in my life has just been through crap, it is worth it to resist and to fight to follow. In the book of Luke, we find this incredible passage at the end, and so you're not worried, the band is going to make their way up. And it says this is Jesus gathered with his followers. And it says, after taking the cup, he gave thanks and said, "Take this and divide it among you. For I tell you, I will not drink again from the fruit of the vine until the kingdom of God comes." And he took bread, gave thanks, and broke it, and gave it to them, saying, "This is my body given for you. Do this in remembrance of me." And what we see that is what we refer to today as communion, where Jesus is symbolizing through those actions the death that he was going to take, and is a way for us of participating and remembering it, which we're going to observe here as a community in just a minute. And how we take communion here at Crosspoint is through a method that we call intinction, which I love because it's way more communal than getting your little disposable cracker and juice. But there's a loaf of bread and you rip a piece off and you dip it in the cup, and in that process you are remembering and participating in the way Jesus' body was broken for you and his blood was shed so that you could be made right with God, that he took the hard path of the cross. But then I want to talk just for a second about what happens after that, because normally we stop there. And so this is what comes. It says, they began to question among themselves which of them it might be who would do this. So he says, someone's going to deceive me. And so they have a second, hey, who do you think is going to deceive him? And then it says, a dispute also arose among them as to which of them was considered to be the greatest. Now get this. Jesus goes, I'm going to die for you. And then they're having a side conversation. Yeah, I think he likes me more than you. And it says, Jesus said to them, the kings of the Gentiles lord it over them, and those who exercise authority over them call themselves benefactors. But you are not to be like that. Instead, the greatest among you should become like the youngest, and the one who rules like the one who serves. For who is greater, the one who is at the table or the one who serves? That's amazing to me. He says, the one who follows me is, let me just say it like this. The one who really follows me is the one who is willing to at times be bloodied, to be burnt, to be broken for my name. And then it continues here at the end. It says he goes into the garden after that with his closest followers. And it says while they're in this garden, he asks them to pray, and he goes off by himself. And he prays this really simple prayer. He basically says, God, if there is no other way, please take this cup from me. But not my will, but yours. In that moment, I can't imagine the pain that he felt. Where he's going, God, I understand how awful, how agonizing, and how torturous this is going to be. And so, God, please, if there is any other way, do it. But I'm not here for me. I'm here for you. And so, I don't know, I want that to be on your hearts right now. What are you pursuing? What are you going after? But the far more important question is, how are you doing it? Not just morally, not just ethically, but a deeper spiritual level of who you are. Have you been lying to yourself? Have you been telling yourself that maybe things are all right and they're not? Have you been telling yourself, I'm fine, I can do this, it's not a big deal, when it is? Maybe have you been deceiving yourself and calling yourself good when you might have to come to the stark reality that maybe I'm not. And then what you do in that moment is the most important thing in the world. is that when you actually get to that moment and you're willing to be painfully honest with yourself about who I am, what I've become, and how I'm doing, does it lead you to depression? Does it lead you to despair? Or do you turn to Christ? And that decision right there in that moment is the most important decision you will ever make in your life. Of what do I do with the broken pieces of my life? Do I get together and hurry up and try to fix it? Do I try to hide it? Or do I bring it to Jesus? And say, I don't really know who I am. I don't know who I've become. I don't know how all this happened. But I need you. And so that's the question I want to ask you this morning. What are you going to do with the broken pieces of your life? Are you going to hide it? Are you going to try to fix it? Or are you going to try to bring it to your Savior, who in that moment accepts, loves, and redeems? I'm going to pray for you. Father, as we're here today, my heart is heavy with my own lies in my life. With the times that I say things are fine, with the times that I say things are good when they're not. With the times that maybe I have personally used people and not valued them and not treated them as the wonderful creations that they are in order to achieve things that were good. And Lord, for each of us here today, I just ask in this moment that we would be true to ourselves, and that we would ask deeply within our hearts, how am I? Where am I? What's happening? And Lord, my prayer is this, that we would have the courage to bring it to you. We would have the courage to bring it to you. And I pray this in the name of your Son, Jesus. Amen.